Hello and welcome to part 5 of Let's Learn Giant Steps with Dr. Levin. No, I'm not a real doctor. I'm allergic to latex, and if I were to wear those latex gloves I'd get a terrible rash, and I'd hate that. Today on Let's Learn Giant Steps, we're going to focus on something very simple. I'm going to give you a lick. Just one lick that works throughout the changes. It covers a whole one chorus of all 16 bars of Giant Steps. The reason I'm showing you this lick is because we're going to need to know a ton of licks, and in showing you this lick I hope to help you write your own licks that just work through some of the trouble spots. And the reason I say we need to learn a ton of licks is because Giant Steps is really fast, so a lot of the time I think most musicians don't really have that much vocabulary that works at 240 beats per minute, and so you have to kind of start making new vocabulary in some ways that will work specifically on this tune. And initially in doing that, it's going to be kind of robotic. Like, you're going to be writing licks and then kind of like going with this script. But I believe if you learn enough licks and write enough licks and transcribe other people's stuff, it starts to mush together, and you start being able to recall these licks by ear, so that you're thinking of them in terms of musical ideas rather than just as straight up autopilot, time for lick A, time for lick B. And also, I believe that if you learn enough licks and they blend together enough, you can't even distinguish which one is being used at any given point eventually. And I know that John Coltrane studied out of this book, this Slinimsky book. I think it's Sliminski. I've got the book. It's an amazing book. It's got like just a billion patterns. It's a book full of like every pattern you could think of. And so Coltrane went through this book and learned all these patterns, and that's part of how he got to be so flexible as a player, and he could hit these changes and move around his lines and adjust them. So I think there is a lot to be learned from learning just a whole bunch of patterns and licks and just having a huge vocabulary, because if you have just a small vocabulary, like I've been saying, it's kind of robotic. You're sort of just taking those few licks and using them, and it's pretty transparent. But if you know just a ton, it mushes together, it becomes like a collage of your influences, and it starts to come out as your own voice. That's at least what I've felt has worked for myself and many of my students. And so here's the lick. So as you can see, the lick is oriented a lot around arpeggiating the chords in Giant Steps, and this lick is almost mostly, it's mostly chord tones, not entirely chord tones, but it serves as yet another good way to get the chords in your ear, but it's also a cool thing for your fingers to get used to some of those fast 2/5s, and it gives you some additional options for those changes. So I recommend writing your own licks and learning this one as an example. And I'll be giving some new licks as I write them over the next couple videos. I'll probably not focus the videos on the licks, but I'll continue to provide more licks so that you can keep learning them. The most important thing about learning these licks is to learn them nice and slow with the metronome first. I've seen, I think a lot of other music teachers will agree with me that the people who use the metronome the most tend to play whatever they play the best. It's really as simple as that. If you use the metronome when you practice a technique or a lick, you will learn it better. I stand by that. So I hope that this lick is fun and exciting, and that if you have any questions, you can always email me, contact me on the YouTube comments. I love to hear your input, and thank you guys for watching this series. It's been a lot of fun so far, and I'll see you next time. Don't sue me for musical malpractice, please.